there anything in the celestial forecast that goes along with things breaking loose? It feels like it.
Well, as I have been saying for the past 9 months, it is in this part of the year that justice is done.
Very dramatic.
Yeah.
Horrible and wonderful
Yeah.
at the same moments.
So it's excess metal, so, you know, on the one hand, not surprising to see an invasion. On the other hand, I don't know, if my understanding is accurate, then should be, this is, we're about to resolve the metal part of this season within the excess metal half of the year. So I would think, you know, could be very quick as far as political justice action goes.
From everything I read and you know, commentaries that I hear, the observers of in the political sphere are all astonished by how fast things are happening compared to anything in their experience.
Yeah.
I haven't watched the news for several days. So I don't know if this is
It's just
a few
more-
days or it's like...
It's just more,
Well, in the
Yeah.
last 2 or 3 weeks, and,
Okay.
and it just
So that
and it
I am,
continues
yeah.
on a daily basis almost.
I wasn't sure if I missed like a more recent.
Yeah. And then you have the whole horrid thing in the Middle East with Turkey, I think, and our abandonment of the Kurdish again. They just don't learn. I'm feeling that internally as well. So.
what do you mean?
Oh, just energy for breaking loose and changing. You know, there's some stuff at home that seems to be resolving.
Yep. Yeah, as you guys know, this kind of knowledge and examination of patterns leads to just that opportunity of seeing the external weather, like the wind and the rain, but also the broader dynamics in the cultural body, and our small circle family cultural body and our own body tend to mirror and reflect each other quite clearly, which is a kind of beautiful, persistent reminder of the underlying, that there is an underlying core generating this singular pattern of transformations.
I had my quarterly checkup for the kidneys related stuff, and that was all clear. That was Friday. So
Great.
That was good.
Great, congratulations. Happy to hear it.
Yeah. It's been about 8 months clear.
Yep, great.
It's like a weight starting to come off. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Just kind of trying to look more, I'm looking at the calendar, to look more specifically with respect to understanding the potential political expressions of this current pattern. It is possible that if it's not resolved in the next 3.5 weeks, that it could drag for another 3 or 4 months. But I expect it to be resolved.
It's still a pretty short time frame.
Mhm. Yep. So one question from the Telegram group was about the difference in relationship between the two Gua patterns, yin-yang line pattern in the two different columns here. We've talked a little bit about it in other sessions, but I know it's confusing. So we can look at it again for a moment. So we're dividing the transformations, the pattern of qi in a full cycle from yin to yang. We're dividing it into 12 parts in this particular lens that we're looking at through. And so the trigram patterns, and Shanti, who asked this question, is familiar with the individual meanings. So I think, Shanti, that you'll see rather quickly if you arrange the trigrams in the post-celestial pattern. And arrange these 12 patterns in the seasonal cycle. You can visualize it by rolling your chart. It's not ideal, but it kind of gives you a more dimensional sense. So you accurately saw the pattern that the cardinals directions are just represented each of themselves, and then the others are repeated. And it's just a matter of dividing space into 8 versus 12. So This is the way that the 8 patterns, the Bagua, the 8 patterns of 3 lines, syncs up with the yearly cycle of yin to yang and yang to yin. So if you overlay the 8 over the 12, you'll see how in the rows in which, in the segments in which a trigram gets repeated, it will be a partial overlap in that segment between the 8 pattern with bigger sections and the 12 pattern with smaller sections. And then there's a choice made as to what to emphasize in that quadrant. Quadrant isn't the right word, but that sector. And then the 6th line gua.
So just while you're still with the 3-line quote, it looks like the unique gua of the season is during the peak of the season.
Right.
Which would make sense.
Right.
I got thrown off because winter really is completion of the circle, and so the high pig is the beginning of winter.
Right.
And it's at the bottom. So I was looking for groups of 3 starting from the top.
Yeah, whenever I make this chart over again, I always consider grouping the water together, but it would then confuse the
Yeah.
what's initial.
Yeah. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure I was on the right piece of that.
So the 6-line pattern, the hexagram, is a cycle. As you can see, as you look down the column, it's a separate pattern. It's not a pattern that can be located precisely on the various cycles of 64. It's extracted from that to show a very clear, simplified wave of rising yang to diminishing yang and rising yin. And it's called the sovereign pattern or the tidal pattern. And so you can see gathering yang until full yang there at So Snake, and then with Wu horse, the yin begins to take space back, or in a way the yang is diminishing, thus making space, all the way down to full yin, 6 broken lines, or open lines might be a better way to say it, at the bottom. Articulating the pattern in the form of the non-doing. Stillness. Do you guys recall where we finished last time we went through the details? Do we end with
You Booster.
yeah. I looked up the pronunciation and John was right. It's yo. It's the
Dog.
It's a different word, but it's the same pronunciation. Um,
I've been noticing it sounds like you're slightly altered the way you say Poe.
well, from years ago, I did.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's not Poe, it's
Paul.
Poe.
Um, It's down, yeah. The shape was right, but it's not this, it's this. So, good, we're in the shoe dog month at the moment. It is Yang Earth, it's the Earth phase of the metal part of the cycle. So it's the integration of the metal energy. The hidden stems are Ding, which is yin, fire, Wu, which is yang, earth, and Xin, which is yin, metal. The hexagram is Qin. Direction is northwest. Time is 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. It's this month, October 8th to November 8th approximately. And dividing those 4 weeks into 2 segments, we call them, the first one cold dew, and the second one frost descends. We did get the first frost last week. And where are we in October? 13th? So in the year in a typical pattern, it would be the, not next week, but the next. The frost would be more regular. But of course that happens to be the case because we are also a mid-latitude between the equator and the pole, which is in sync with this articulation of this pattern. So it would be metaphorical if it were not literal, but it would exist wherever you may be. The organ is stomach. The meridian is the pericardium and the hand Juyin. The note is A sharp. Qualities are intuitive, artistic, honest, and loyal if in harmony, and evasive or stubborn if out of harmony. Transformation is cold water. Given the support of other water energy, either seasonally or contextually. In our form, the mantra is Hum. That's where we bring down the energy, use the silver light seal, and the year's cycle is realized. The bright moon on Kunlun Mountain. You can see in the hexagram also the brightness on top of the stillness.
Is this considered the mudra?
No, this is the
So-
this is the one before.
No, I guess I'm one behind you. For the home. Or that's done with the silver lights.
Yeah.
Is there a golden light seal in?
That's
It is.
that's in this context.
Yeah.
Now the tea's getting a little punchy. And so the final branch is High Pig, and it is the beginning of winter. It's in yin water. The hidden stems are Jia, yang wood, and Run, yang water. We're still essentially in the northwest segment. The Qian heaven, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m., establishing winter and minor snow, beginning November 6, 7, 8-ish. And finishing that first week of December. The bladders, the organ, the triple burner, and the hand Xiao Yang is the meridian. The note, the 12-note scale is B. Qualities are gentle, knowing, joyful, and brave. Out of balance, it is angry and unstable. Transformation is wind wood, given the support of the environment, context. And in our form, this is Qingjing Wu Wei. With the Tai Chi hand seal. If you get to the end and you're inspired to repeat the form, that would be a natural practice pattern as well. It is a cycle. We should remind ourselves frequently, if not constantly, to practice from the hub of the wheel, as I was referring to in class, in practice today. And so there are these dynamics that we're engaging and that we're experiencing, and movements and mudras, and sometimes visualizations, but even a visualization should be engaged from the place of brightness and stillness, a kind of allowing and observing as if it was already an inevitable happening, even though it feels like it's what you're doing. And so it's from that place, and that was the emphasis in the heart seal the Mind Seal picture as well. Concentrate on non-existence. Watch over existence. Sometimes that's translated as guarding, but watching over. It's more accurate, I think, closer to the experience. Concentrate on non-existence, watch over existence. Also, in the Qing Jing Jing, constantly still and constantly adapting at the same time. And so when we engage in dynamic forms or even learning, even as we learn here, it can be as if present, as if absent. It can be from the hub of the wheel that we're engaging in the changes of our moments and days practice as well.
So, you sure? I think you're probably closer to articulating than I am.
I'm not sure about that.
But we'll find out.
But I think it was in this piece of the scripture that there's a reference to the true body,
Mm-hmm.
and you said the body of the Tao.
Mm-hmm.
But when I first heard that, I had this sort of the sense of the way that who you are and who you're formed as in this view is very much the formation of the subtle as well. The channels forming kind of are the child forming in a way.
Sure.
And so I'm curious if that, especially with the 8 extraordinary vessels, if there's something in the way you're formulating that, observing as though it's already happened, and the time frame for those parts of our body or parts of ourself is so much more protracted in a sense, so much more drawn out, like the cycles that they work on are more months long, or rather than day-to-day cycles.
In the meridians and development of the body, you mean, or?
Yeah, particularly with the Chong and the Ren and the Du and the belt vessel,
Mhm.
the ones that are often sort of associated with alchemical work,
Yeah.
in that sort of way that they're, I believe, the Chong is said to form like at the moment of conception,
Mm.
so it's fully present pre-birth,
Mhm.
right to birth, and the others form through contact with bonding with mother, or gaining independence with sitting and standing, and through worldly encounter they sort of take their shape, and they
Mhm.
then sort of set up the pattern of your subsequent experiences to some extent.
Mm.
But I'm having it resonated with what you said in your practice video, that these tools for rooting out the kind of deeper lodged patterns or tendencies
Mhm.
are these forms, and I've definitely been feeling that sense that it's a very consistent and powerful way of just not even directing deliberately, but just instilling that movement towards clearing.
Mhm.
But I'm just curious if the true body opening to the subtle in that way, I think, involves coming to know that true body in some sense. And I'm not sure if that makes. So that wasn't articulate at all.
No, it wasn't really.
So that was-
Are you thinking of the physical body when you say the true body, or?
I think my association was on hearing it was that in a way I think this week some of my reading has been sort of asking. I should have asked these questions.
No, it's all good.
There are a few quotes that have been very helpful, and I didn't bring them with me, which was foolish in trying to open this up, but trying to situate pre and post celestial and trying to understand the difference between like, the extraordinary vessels and the organ channels in that kind of model. But there's something in the reference to the true body that I sort of associate with I suppose it would be addressing your meaning, your fate, your path, your life path in this existence. There will be that aspect to it, perhaps. Maybe that's where I'm drawing those connections. But it's really only true from the assumption of going around looking at the physical world and taking that for granted. And I suppose part of the opening that I'm beginning to open onto is more the chi aspect, or at least recognizing that, like you're saying about loosening things up, I think I'm having something of a sense that there's this parallel process, that things in your life are happening, but then also maybe things in a certain region you're addressing through sitting regularly or through physical opening or through practicing a form or whatever it is, that there's less of an assumption that one is causing the other in some way.
Right.
That isn't a question.
That's right. No, it's interesting. So one thing is, when we think about it, we should identify kind of at what scale, at what, in what context are we thinking of true body? Because there's a few ways to think about it. In one sense, it is emptiness. In one sense, it is Tao. You know, as opposed to aligning our behavior with our innate character. And they're both useful ways to think about it, but we should, when we think about it, we should know which, they're the same, but they're not. And so,
yeah, I think I sort of jumped to fill in that image, and then I heard you say that, and then there's this, there are those two, what you just said,
right.
There are those two versions there.
Yeah. And so, your innate nature, the original spark, and the qualities that has in this particular manifestation that you experience as through and as your body and self. Trueness, on the one hand, is in alignment with that inner nature and your Ming destiny, the outward pattern that your life takes. But true in the sense of reality and realization, the body of that. We think of the body, the yin aspect of that, as the space, the emptiness, the inevitable inevitable union with the clarity and the brightness, interdependent. So we say body, but it's like the way that emptiness is the form is part of what we're pointing to. That. And so the word, forgetting opinion at the moment, I don't have it here. It's like T, maybe. I think it might be T. T-I. For body in this case is a physical reference body. It's not Shen. And of course it's not meaning, that would be translated differently. It has that vessel aspect.
Have you read that before?
A few times
Okay.
during the STEMS series, when the translation was pretty fresh, it needs a lot of smoothing. But it, yeah. It is concise and profound in enjoyable ways.
I found it very difficult.
Did you?
Yeah. I mean, just the idea of focusing on non-existence.
Yeah.
Trying to get a grasp in any way of what that means.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
I tend to be someone who in any sort of conceptual discussion, I like sort of tangible images. And so that's about as far away as you can get.
Yeah, and that maybe it was that feeling in you that led me to elaborate in the practice session, and trying to tether it to like an experience of stillness that then you can extrapolate into, or that can develop on its own even. Into kind of stillnessness. But like silence and stillness are tangible to the mind in a way. And so I usually use those words, but we should also be connecting them to not just, that difference, but also to absence, to emptiness.
Are emptiness and non-existence used interchangeably? Or are they...
Not 100%, but pretty close.
The words, seem to get us into trouble all the time. And when I was trying to understand what you mean by experiencing the form from the hub. When you rolled up the chart into a cylinder, that kind of was when you said hub, I was thinking of it that way.
Yeah, that's
And
accurate.
in the middle of that cylinder, is that sort of line up with your image?
Yeah. So, it's tricky because you're arranging into a visual model
Yeah.
something that has no location.
Yeah.
But it's a useful visualization. Of course, Lao Tzu uses it in the Tao Te Ching. That it is the space that allows the wheel to move, and that makes the wheel a wheel. But so the intent of that instruction is to point toward the kind of beneath and behind it all. Any movement, change, experience of time or space is generated out of this bright space of absence and potentiality. Potent, this pregnant pause. And so it's from that place that it's in that place that we want to rest our mind until we recognize that that place is our mind. And it's from that location that we can observe our experience. Either within meditation or within the day or the week or the year or the lifetime. And that's what constancy is that space that doesn't change and that is fundamentally in itself, therefore constant. So in meditation it is the stillness, the silence, and so we make our way back along the spectrum of our coarse experience to subtle experience to stillness within the subtle, immaterial within that almost immaterial chi field and experience. And it's from there that we adapt to our experience, that we do the doings of the day or the practice.
I think that answers my question.
I think God answered questions I haven't even asked yet. That makes me think of experiences that feel effortless, where a lot of people describe, in music, the feeling of getting out of the way. I guess meaning your ego is not directing, you're just kind of in the patterns.
Yeah.
And I've had those experiences in music and in sports where, where just all of a sudden you've just done something really perfect.
But you're aware of it all, hopefully. That you can do that and be... When I was a teenager, I would have that experience often, rock climbing. But sometimes I wouldn't be aware of it. I would just be absent. And so the awareness counts as a...
Oh. Just ruined it all for me. I've never been aware of anything in my life.
but yeah, so that's
I guess...
I mean, you were
Yes, you are
describing it.
aware, and then sometimes that becomes a problem because that kind of blocks it.
Yeah. So what as the skill in relationship to that experience, whether you're playing music or meditating, is being aware without interrupting. Not steering, just being.
I guess that's why, a practice can be difficult. Or else maybe we just make it difficult, but it certainly feels difficult to not let the awareness intrude on the flow of being. And I can't, I'm not sure how to express that, but
It sounds like you're saying like self-awareness.
well, just to be more specific, like if I'm playing something on the guitar and then I think, oh wow, I wonder where did that come from? It's like, just my fingers just did something.
Yeah, and wherever it came from, it went back to.
But
after
now
that.
while I'm thinking about that, I'm completely
Yeah,
off the train.
yeah. But I think it's, that's our habit of interrupting that experience. But I think it's, well within yours and our capacity to develop in that, to develop that skill of being aware of it, but not interrupting.
I think with a performance, and it can be a performance for yourself, it doesn't have to be, but the trap for me is, and maybe this is true for meditating too, that becoming aware of it, and then you're all of a sudden trying to make it keep happening, and you somehow ego, if that's a word for it, is trying to direct something that you're not really directing, but you've now put a layer of something in the way of, and if you can, when you talk about it, when you're guiding our practice to observe something but let it go,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the trick, I guess. But when that's not working, when I'm aware of being in the flow of some, being, I just jumped in the stream and I'm going along with the current,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm aware of the current, but now I'm trying to make myself stay in the current as opposed to being in the current
Mm-hmm.
without an effort.
Mm-hmm.
That's what gets in the way, and it's being able to recognize that I'm in the stream, and then let go of feeling that I should praise myself, or that somebody should praise me for being in the stream, and isn't that wonderful, and you made such a beautiful melody, or whatever the thing is that you're being aware of. So not being attached to that and being able to let it go is the hard part.
Yeah. But I think that having established with some clarity that the trick is not doing, if you trust that instruction from the scripture, and sometimes from me, that if you trust that, then you drain the trying out of whatever comes up. And so if let it be or let it go is your response to engagement with your thoughts or experience, then you gradually catch the engagement, the attachment, the grasping, the entanglement. You gradually catch it closer to its root until you're kind of before it starts, where the movement toward engagement is perceptible, and you let that go. So you're constantly reestablishing center and stillness until you don't need to. And then the happening is just happening, and you're still, just still. And so, interrupting the interruption perpetually with non-doing orientation, let it go, let it be, let it go, let it be, let it go, let it be. And of course, the need to say that to yourself exists at a certain time, or sometimes if you're particularly triggered or disturbed in a particular day, then you have to actually say to yourself, let it go, let it be.
Right.
But at other times, and hopefully sometimes in meditation, it's just a directional orientation to opening rather than closing, that can operate on the most subtle dimensions, where something begins to arise and you don't become that thing, you stay behind it, below it, before it. And the waves just happen on the surface, and in a deep ocean, it's just still.
I feel like the daily rhythm is a way of saying that to yourself. Sort of structured in time rather than in meaning. And so that's very effective to me.
Could you give it like an example of?
Like sitting at a set time each morning, or for me, like trying to be up a little bit before dawn, if that's when, for me, that's something I'm trying to regulate. That then involves decisions about when to go to sleep, and that, all of those things. That it's a bit like last week. I was mentioning this meaning level of language, and then this pattern level of language, like symbolic relations. That, doing something in time is almost like saying it consistently, saying it with
Structure. Yeah.
With structure, yeah. And I think I think my previous question was evasive just because I wasn't going into details, but I think what you were just describing, so I've been reading around some of the 8 vessels. It's in alignment with an approach to healing that I think is intrinsic in this work, so I'm trying not to see those things as separate, but in my understanding, the belt channel is associated with accumulations over your lifetime that is sort of to do with social adaptation and things like that, that you've effectively, through all these phases of who you've been, you've taken on and held certain associations, and some of the other 8 vessels are to do with relations in time, i.e. not being in the present moment, which this resting in stillness, for me anyway, has this sense of you are immediately there where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And the part of that that feels like it can sort of destabilize and undermine the everyday is this sense of recurrence. Something's deeply rooted, something's deeply held. And it's difficult, if you can't feel it, to clear that accumulation in
Sure.
some way. And yeah, I just want this, it feels a bit more specific to kind of name that I've observed in myself certain what feel like quite deep rooted tendencies. So as much as I'm steering on the everyday level, there's this something there that is somewhere in my body, or that is being held somewhere in my energetic system, or however you want to describe it. But the most effective stabilizing and sort of allowing of that to resolve itself is through these practices and associated, I think, my experience of acupuncture in the past has been that it's very much connected, depending on the approach, can address the same kind of issues at the same level, or relations with time or self-perception and things like this. But it was all to say that what you just described is, it's been verified in my own experiences as very powerful and very in line with truth. That's not a question. It's a comment.
And the truth is, the president made it very clear that there was no quid pro quo. I'm just saying that because we're recording. Sorry. Well, not really. Well, I feel a little bit ping-pongy, but just reflecting more on what you were saying about separating yourself from the pattern, to observe the pattern. That sort of is opening up something for me of, well, an analogy is in playing an instrument. When you are learning and continuing to learn, you practice things in a very conscious way, but when it comes time to actually perform, you just forget about it, and you just try to be present. You know, it's usually within some kind of structure, but you're not doing your exercises. So I'm seeing that having a daily practice, which I continue to struggle with, is probably similar, although there is no performance per se, but in some sense, by doing the practice part of practicing. I mean, practicing an instrument, as opposed to performing. Well, I don't know how you would make that analogy with meditation practice, but by practicing meditation, you eventually can let go of. You're teaching yourself And at some point, it seems that through repetition, that you can then let go of that, and it's just, you're just in it.
Mm.
I don't know if that
Yeah, that's
fits
true.
what you've experienced and how you would teach it.
Yep, it fits. And it's true in two ways. One is within the meditation practice itself, but also the meditation practice is practice for the rest of the hours of the day. So it's either, in a way,
Life is your
none of it
performance.
is practice, or all of it is practice, or none of it is performance, or all of it is performance. On the one hand, it's not different. On the other hand, it is sharpening a tool that we use all day.
Yeah. But then there's a really hard part in that wanting praise for performance as opposed to just sharing. And I hope I get to the point where I can just share
Sure.
and let go of that other part.
Yep.
I see you doing that in your teaching
Mm.
and in your life.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I think just noticing it as you have it begins to expose, allow it to crumble rather than reestablish it.
yeah.
And it is freeing,
Yeah.
and it's one of the things that can pull us off center and make it harder to find stillness and
Thank you.
it's also a kind of, and it's, in a way, it's just saying again what we've been talking about, but there's a cumulative momentum to the minutes of practice. As opposed to accumulating the stuff that pulls you away, and so the more minutes, moments we accumulate, either from being tethered to that constancy throughout the day, or in the sort of protected structure of being tethered to the constancy and brightness and stillness during practice. It kind of builds naturally. Like you have it going into the next day, and you have it going into the following day. And then when you're met with things that tend to pull you, push you off balance, or turbulence globally, nationally, locally, or a high-speed impact with a tree, then, well, like a personal trauma.
That would do it.
Well, so then when you're met with these exceptional circumstances, you bring all this stillness to it, and you can sustain center through turbulence or challenge of some kind. I had a high-speed impact with a tree when I was 16 in a car, and it was one of the most beautiful, still, sort of as if orchestrated light and sound moments that I've experienced. It's kind of interesting.
Boy. Did the tree move at all, or?
The tree did not move.
Did you have a big recovery period after, or was?
No, the car did its thing with airbags and this and that. Totaled the car, but it was airborne off a curving
Mhm.
curve that went up, so the tires unweighted shortly after the rain had started, and so it just went sideways, and it was a hill, so it went into the woods. But as soon as the tires lost traction, like everything was this. It was like a movie, you know. It was everything was super slow. It wasn't tense. It was just peaceful, and appeared to last for a very long time. So it's just an interesting experience outside of our daily experience, you know. But it's that kind of feeling. I'm not saying that was some sort of enlightenment moment. I'm more saying it's like that, in the sense that in the midst, things are beautifully still. You know, I don't know. It can be a useful reference for your own internal experience to match the pattern that we're talking about in these sort of daily, I'm trying to practice and I'm trying to not try. But to get a visceral feeling of any dramatic or near-death experiences that one might have had, and recognize the stillness from those experiences, bring that recognition into your meditation, because it's a kind of extreme letting go. Makes that possible. When the thing that's happening is happening no matter what, then if you recognize that with confidence, the result is necessarily not resisting the experience. And that's what we're looking for. It's happening.
Yeah.
Don't resist.
What it would do for, if it's possible even, but what it would be like to, if that was the normal way of perception and living, and as opposed to being the exception.
Mm.
If we're capable of that.
Well, that would be, what it is to be a sage. It is possible along the whole spectrum of fully complete and constant to constantly returning. Um,
It's mysterious. There's a moment when you're, if you've ever worked on a scaffolding, like you probably did have this experience building here, where you have a scaffolding and there's one 2x10 or 2x8 or whatever you're using, and it overlaps another, and you're working backwards, and you step down that 1.5 inches, and your mind all of a sudden goes, ah! You know, because it feels like it's going to be more than 1.5 inches,
yeah.
as opposed to that moment of calm, things are happening very slow, and your perceptions are taking it all in, even though it's happening really fast.
But there is a stop that happens. Like there's a silence that happens, even if that's your experience of it.
Yeah.
Like, there is a kind of thunderclap that, I mean, you weren't thinking about anything else.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just,
Yeah.
like, you know, if it could be a perpetual state of,
Yeah.
as long as that's relaxed, then you're getting somewhere. But it's sort of like a big bang of a gong or a bell. Like it blasts out all the chatter.
Yeah, that happens when you start are sitting with,
Mhm.
with the bell.
Good.
It's always a sort of a delicious shock.
Yeah. It's a piercing bell. It's good that way.
Similar effect to mine, where it creates this kind of whistling
Mm-hmm.
noise.
That
almost like
sustains,
wind.
as
Yeah,
if it's
always in like a certain
somewhere else.
corner of the room. and
Yeah.
It must be the frequency.
It's the overtone.
So it does this, like towards the end, it's
Yeah.
decay.
Right.
Strange effect.
Yeah. Something like that happens for me is the when the resonance of the bell itself has stopped, you're then attuned to that resonance that's already everywhere. So you're just hearing that resonance, even though these sound waves have stopped. Now you're just kind of resting in that spectrum of sound that is always somewhere in your experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Julie's been describing that, walking, you know, getting the resonance from rocks
Mhm.
or trees, and it's a feeling, but it's not really a sound, but it's sort of feeling the resonance of.
Yeah, frequency, vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't had that experience.
Yeah, I bet you have in other
Well,
contexts, like the.
I haven't been aware of having that experience. Maybe
No,
it's
but
a better way to put it.
I mean, even as I was going to say crude, but it's not really crude. But like it's not actually less subtle. But like, you go into a space with people or without people, the feel of the space is a vibration like that. And you know, the feeling of a crowd when you're starting to play, or the feeling of the day, or when somebody walks into the room and suddenly everything is different. And those kinds of feelings, you know, if we tune with that kind of tuning fork, or ear, more accurately, to that kind of feeling within, that's the kind of subtle awareness we're looking to develop.
Yeah.
Will lead us down the road to more and more subtle perception. And what allows for subtle perception is space. Space and silence, stillness. A relationship to that space allows, you know, subtle things to be perceptible.
It's an incredible exercise. Using a microphone, if you put on headphones and just the microphones are a little more sensitive than your ears. Suddenly the refrigerator or the buzzing electrical cables, you realize how much there is there that you obviously are picking up on, but you're just sort of vibrating and filtering out. But,
Yeah.
it doesn't take much of a boost to suddenly realize there's a whole world there of
Yeah.
frequencies and
Or even to make the connection is useful between, like, why do I feel I should leave this space? You know, but if you listen like that, and these various hums that are vibrations that are out of harmony, out of sync.
I'm just glad you block them out.
Yeah, fluorescent lighting is one
Fluorescent lighting.
really I'm aware of at night.
Definitely.
Well, no, it's
Oh, the buzz.
the buzz, yeah.
That's true.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, lighting of any kind, really, but especially. Yeah. Other than flame, I guess.
There's a, I guess it's a documentary coming to Rosendale about all the electromagnetic frequencies from devices.
Mm.
You know Michelle Hertz from the other side of the road?
Mm.
She's and her husband built up behind us, 10 years, more than 10 probably, ago. And she's been very involved with the group that's trying to get rid of smart meters.
Mm.
So, there's been a whole lot of stuff from that group about the dangers of the frequencies
Mhm.
in our daily lives now,
Mhm.
and especially focused on the smart meters. And I think anyway, I think it's Tuesday. There's a theater
Yeah, I think
showing
it
that.
affects us all. I think that's one of the major reasons this room in this house feels as good and nourishing as it does. I got a meter at one point. I was curious because in a lot of the rooms I put the outlets on the on switches also, so that you can drop fully out of EMF. But in the clay walls, my meter picked up you know, well below what the EMF folks say is
See it?
safe. Yeah. So I was happy to
Yeah.
see that, even
Yeah.
you know, even right next to where I know the wires are and stuff. But yeah, forgetting to turn off your devices or Wi-Fi and stuff like that can also affect you. But let's at least wrap the recording part of this. Can you hit the?
Yeah.